The shattered crown. The prophecy foretold. The winds howled through the ancient trees of Eldoria, carrying with them whispers of an age-old prophecy. In the heart of the kingdom, nestled within the crumbling walls of the ethereal temple, the words of the prophecy echoed once more. When the crown lies shattered, and darkness covers the land, a hero shall rise from the unlikeliest of places, and the kingdom shall be restored. Centuries had passed since the shattered crown was broken into 3 pieces and hidden away, each piece protected by a powerful guardian. The kingdom had fallen into chaos, ruled by a tyrant who cared only for his own power. But now, as shadows lengthened across the land, the prophecy stirred once more, waiting for the one who would fulfill it. The unlikely hero. Calen had never imagined his life would be anything more than the heat of the forge and the rhythm of hammer on steel. The son of a humble blacksmith, he had spent his days in the quiet village of Briarwood, crafting tools and mending armor, never dreaming of adventure. But fate has a way of finding even the most ordinary of people. One evening, as Calen worked late at the forge, the firelight casting flickering shadows across the walls, a sudden gust of wind blew the door open. A chill ran down his spine as he turned to see an old woman standing in the doorway, her eyes gleaming with a strange, otherworldly light. "Who are you?" Calen asked, his hand instinctively reaching for the nearest hammer. The woman stepped forward, her voice a whisper that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I am a messenger, sent by the spirits of old. The time has come, Calen. You are the one who must restore the shattered crown." Calen frowned, confusion and disbelief warring in his mind. "What are you talking about? I'm just a blacksmith's apprentice." The woman smiled, her gaze piercing through him. "The crown has chosen you. Take this," she said, handing him a small, ancient medallion. "It will guide you on your journey." Before Calen could say another word, the woman vanished as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving him alone with the medallion and a sense of impending destiny. That night, his dreams were filled with visions of 3 powerful relics, scattered across the kingdom, each protected by a fearsome guardian. When he awoke, he knew what he had to do. The dragon's lair. The journey to the dragon's lair was long and treacherous. Calen had never ventured far from Briarwood, and the wild lands beyond the village were filled with dangers he had only heard of in tales. But the medallion around his neck seemed to pulse with a life of its own, guiding him through the dense forests and across the jagged mountains. As he neared the volcanic peak where the dragon was said to dwell, Calen's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea how he would defeat a dragon, but he knew he couldn't turn back. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden twang of a bowstring. An arrow embedded itself in the ground at his feet, and Calen spun around to see a figure emerge from the trees, a bow in hand and a quiver of arrows slung across their back. "State your business, traveler," the figure said, their voice calm but commanding. Calen raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm just passing through. I don't want any trouble." The figure stepped closer, and Calen could see that it was a young woman, her eyes sharp and calculating. "You're headed to the dragon's lair, aren't you?" Calen hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. I need to find something there." The woman lowered her bow, her expression softening slightly. "I'm Lyria, of the Moonshadow clan. The dragon guards a piece of the shattered crown, doesn't it?" Calen's eyes widened. "How do you know about the crown?" Lyria smiled faintly. "My clan has been watching over the secrets of Eldoria for generations. We've been waiting for someone like you. If you're truly the one from the prophecy, then we share a common goal." And so, with Lyria at his side, Calen continued his journey. Together, they scaled the treacherous cliffs of the volcanic mountain, dodging streams of molten lava and navigating narrow ledges that crumbled beneath their feet. When they finally reached the entrance to the dragon's lair, the ground trembled as a deep, rumbling growl echoed from within. Calen's grip tightened on the hilt of his sword as he stepped inside, the heat of the lava pools nearly unbearable. There, in the heart of the lair, lay the first piece of the crown, gleaming in the firelight. But it was not unguarded. A massive dragon, its scales shimmering like molten gold, uncoiled from its resting place and fixed its blazing eyes on the intruders. Skaris, the dragon, let out a roar that shook the very walls of the cavern. Who dares enter my domain? Calen swallowed hard, his knees trembling, but he stood his ground. I am Calen, son of a blacksmith, and I seek the shattered crown. The dragon's laughter was like thunder. A mere mortal dares to challenge me? You are brave, but foolish. But as the dragon prepared to unleash its fiery breath, the medallion around Calen's neck began to glow. He felt a surge of power course through him, and with a shout, he raised the medallion high. The dragon's fire halted in midair, swirling around the medallion like a serpent caught in a snare. Skaris' eyes widened in surprise as Calen stepped forward, the fire parting before him. You possess the power of the ancient kings, the dragon rumbled, its tone shifting from mockery to respect. Very well, blacksmith. You may take the crown piece. But know this, the true test lies ahead. I will aid you in your quest, for I see now that you are indeed the chosen one. With Skaris as their ally, Calen and Lyria retrieved the first piece of the shattered crown, but there was no time to celebrate. The medallion pulsed once more, guiding them to their next destination, the enchanted forest. The enchanted forest. The enchanted forest was a place of wonder and danger, where the trees whispered secrets and the very air shimmered with magic. The paths through the forest twisted and turned, leading travelers in circles or vanishing altogether. It was said that time itself flowed differently here, and many who entered the forest never returned. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Calen and Lyria felt the magic around them grow stronger, warping their perceptions and testing their resolve. They were constantly on guard, knowing that the second piece of the crown was within their grasp but also that it was fiercely guarded. The Sylvan Elves, once the peaceful protectors of the forest, had fallen under a dark curse. Their leader, Queen Eldoria, had become twisted by the same magic that had broken the crown. The elves were now hostile to outsiders, and their enchanted arrows could strike down even the most skilled warriors. We must be careful, Lyria warned, her voice low as they crouched behind a thicket. The elves are not what they once were. Calen nodded, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the forest's protectors had become its greatest threat. But he was determined to free them from the curse, and with Skaris by their side, they pressed on. As they neared the center of the forest, the trees grew taller and more ancient, their branches forming a nearly impenetrable canopy. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and a faint glow emanated from the heart of the forest. There, Lyria whispered, pointing to a clearing up ahead. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its trunk as wide as a house. Embedded in its bark was the second piece of the crown, pulsing with dark energy. But before they could reach it, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Queen Eldoria, her once beautiful features now twisted by the curse, raised her staff, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. You dare enter my domain, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You will never leave this forest alive. Calen stepped forward, holding up the medallion. I seek to restore the shattered crown, and with it, the true ruler of Eldoria. Let us help you break this curse. For a moment, Eldoria hesitated, the darkness in her eyes flickering. But the curse had its claws deep in her soul, and she lashed out with a blast of dark magic. Skaris roared, unleashing a torrent of flame that collided with Eldoria's magic, the two forces clashing in a brilliant display of light and shadow. Lyria fired arrows that shattered the enchantments surrounding the tree, and Calen, guided by the medallion, charged forward. The battle was fierce, but with their combined strength, they managed to weaken the curse that bound Eldoria. As Calen reached the ancient tree, he placed his hand on the crown piece, and the dark energy began to dissipate, replaced by a soft, golden light. Eldoria let out a cry as the curse was broken, collapsing to the ground. The dark magic that had twisted the forest began to recede, and the Sylvan Elves, freed from the curse, emerged from the shadows. You have my gratitude, Queen Eldoria said, her voice weary but sincere. The crown piece is yours. May it guide you to victory. With the second piece of the crown in hand, Calen, Lyria, and Skaris prepared for the final leg of their journey. The medallion now pointed them to the most dangerous place in all of Eldoria. The abyss of shadows was a place of nightmares, a chasm so deep and dark that it was said to be the very edge of the world. No one who entered the abyss had ever returned, and the few who dared approach it spoke of a presence that watched from the shadows, waiting to consume any who trespassed. As Calen, Lyria, and Skaris descended into the abyss, the light began to fade, and the air grew cold and heavy. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift and change, as if the abyss itself was alive, twisting reality to its will. "The final piece of the crown lies here," Calen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But so does the final guardian." They pressed on, their senses heightened by the oppressive darkness. As they reached the deepest part of the abyss, they found themselves standing before a massive, ancient throne, carved from the very rock of the chasm. Seated upon the throne was Malakar, an ancient sorcerer whose body had long since turned to dust, but whose spirit remained bound to the crown piece he held in his skeletal hand. "Fools," Malakar's voice echoed through the abyss, cold and hollow. "Do you think you can defeat me? I am eternal, and I have seen the rise and fall of empires. You are nothing but insects before me." Calen felt a chill run down his spine as Malakar's gaze fixed on him, the sorcerer's eyes burning with a malevolent light. But he knew that he could not turn back now. "We are here to restore the shattered crown," Calen said, stepping forward. "And we will not leave without it." Malakar's laughter was like the creaking of ancient bones. "Then you shall never leave at all." With a wave of his hand, Malakar summoned the shadows to life, and the very darkness of the abyss rose up to swallow them. Skaris roared in defiance, unleashing a blast of fire that pushed back the encroaching darkness, while Lyria's arrows pierced the shadowy tendrils that sought to ensnare them. But Malakar was powerful, and his magic seemed endless. The shadows pressed in from all sides, and Calen felt the weight of despair threatening to overwhelm him. It was as if the abyss itself was feeding on their fears, growing stronger with every passing moment. But then, in the midst of the chaos, Calen heard a voice, a whisper that cut through the darkness like a beam of light. It was the medallion, glowing brighter than ever before, and in that moment, Calen understood. "Lyria, Skaris," he called out, his voice filled with newfound determination. "We can't fight him alone. We need to stand together, as one." The medallion's light grew, driving back the shadows and revealing the path to victory. Lyria and Skaris moved to Calen's side, their strength and resolve bolstered by his courage. Together, they faced Malakar, their combined power a force that the sorcerer could not withstand. As they charged forward, Calen raised the medallion high, and a brilliant light erupted from it, engulfing Malakar and shattering the darkness that had bound him for centuries. The final piece of the crown slipped from his grasp, and as it touched the ground, the abyss itself began to tremble. "You may have defeated me," Malakar's voice echoed faintly, "but the true battle is yet to come." With the final piece of the crown in hand, the trio raced out of the collapsing abyss, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the chasm closed behind them. The path to the eternal altar was clear, but they knew that the final challenge awaited them in Aethrion, the ancient city where the crown must be restored. The crown restored. The city of Aethrion had once been the jewel of Eldoria, a place of beauty and magic. But now, it lay in ruins, a shadow of its former glory. The streets were deserted, and the once majestic towers had crumbled to dust. As Calen, Lyria, and Skaris entered the city, they were met with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant echoes of their footsteps. But they knew they were not alone. At the heart of the city, on the steps of the eternal altar, stood King Valros, the usurper who had plunged Eldoria into darkness. Behind him, an army of soldiers and dark creatures stood ready to defend the last vestiges of his power. "You've come far," Valros sneered, his eyes filled with contempt. "But this is where your journey ends." Calen stepped forward, the shattered crown held firmly in his hands. "Your reign is over, Valros. The crown will be restored, and Eldoria will be free." Valros laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Do you really think you can defeat me? I have ruled this land for decades, and I will not be undone by a mere blacksmith." But Calen was no longer just a blacksmith. He was the chosen one, the hero of the prophecy, and he would not back down. "Lyria, Skaris, let's finish this," he said, his voice steady and strong. The final battle was fierce and unforgiving. Valros unleashed the full force of his dark magic, summoning storms of fire and shadow that threatened to engulf the city. But Calen, Lyria, and Skaris fought with everything they had, their determination unyielding. As they battled their way to the eternal altar, the crown pieces began to glow, resonating with the magic of the ancient city. Calen knew that this was the moment, the prophecy was about to be fulfilled. With one final push, they reached the altar, and Calen placed the shattered crown upon it. The pieces fused together, and a brilliant light erupted from the crown, spreading across the city like a wave of pure energy. Valros let out a scream of rage and despair as the light consumed him, his power crumbling to dust. The darkness that had plagued Eldoria for so long was lifted, and the true ruler of the land was revealed. From the light emerged Queen Eldoria, the rightful heir to the throne, long hidden by the crown's magic. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air, bringing with it the promise of a new dawn. "Thank you, Calen," Queen Eldoria said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have restored the crown, and with it, the hope of our people. Eldoria is free once more. A new dawn." With Queen Eldoria restored to the throne, Eldoria began to heal. The dark magic that had held the land in its grip for so long was finally broken, and the people began to rebuild their lives. Calen, Lyria, and Skaris were hailed as heroes, their names spoken with reverence and admiration. But when the celebrations were over, they chose to return to their simpler lives, knowing that the true reward was the peace they had helped restore. In the final scene, Calen is back at the forge, now a master blacksmith. As he hammers away at a new crown for the future ruler of Eldoria, the medallion hangs on the wall, a reminder of the journey he undertook and the destiny he fulfilled. The story ends with the sun rising over the land, casting its golden light on the new and prosperous kingdom of Eldoria, a land where peace, justice, and equality reign.